Appreciate everyone taking the time to join. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining today's Take 30 session, where our topic is going to focus on IBM Security's QRadar SIEM and Randori attack surface management solutions. My name is Paul Donahue, and I'm the cybersecurity sales leader here at Ironside. Ironside and IBM have a long history of partnership, so we're very fortunate to be joined today by our IBM North American Threat Management leader, Scott McNeil. And before we get started, just wanted to say, in recent years, implementing an evolving cybersecurity plan has become essential to almost every organization. Cyber threats, internally and externally, are continuing to mount as hackers get more sophisticated in their attack methods. As a matter of fact, for those who may have seen it or are not familiar, in the most recent 2023 cost of a data breach study, the average cost increased to $4.45 million. Now, the good news is that Ironside and IBM have the solutions and expertise to help our clients prepare and protect themselves from these adversaries. Now, Scott, before we get started in our Q&A, IBM made some recent announcements at RSA in April about some advancements that they've made. Could you talk to those for those who weren't in attendance?
Absolutely. Yeah. And Paul, if we want to kind of go through the slides, we can kind of jam through this a little bit.
Sure.
Happy to talk to it. So I think what's really important to talk about is the gift we have of a great brand. So for those on this line who are familiar with Q1 Labs, for the last 15, 16 years, it's been a market leader. And so the brand comes with a certain notoriety, and we've leaned into that as a flagship cornerstone solution. So, at RSA, we made some announcements. And Paul, I might start with kind of a quick story is in meeting with a group of CISOs recently, the question was asked to kind of spur the dinner along, which was, if you're starting out a new SOC or a new fusion center, please tell us what your top 1 or 2 or 3 technologies be that you would purchase. And unequivocally, it was a SIEM. You have to start with a SIEM. It's a mature environment. We all understand that. There's a lot of new flash technology that we're going to talk about some today. However, the bedrock is you have to do correlation. And even some of the vendors you see today that never did SIEM are trying to do logging as well. So the point there is when we say QRadar, it is still the lifeblood of the IBM threat portfolio, how we look at things like TDR for threat detection and response. In saying that, the question is, well, how do we advance it then? With the IBM muscle behind it, what are we doing? We've created QRadar Suite, which QRadar Suite is not a product. It's the accompaniment of all of these industry-leading technologies that Ironside can help support, that IBM is here to support, that range from traditional XDR technology, being the EDR and NDR for the network side, all the way through full-blown orchestration for SOAR. Again, it hinges on our side around the SIEM. So what are we doing now? All that is table stakes in so many ways for you and I, Paul. What are we doing? We have made a maniacal focus to really take the position of an analyst. We want to help support the analyst. We look at all the different industry trends, and the one that never gets capitalized, in my opinion, is alert fatigue or analyst fatigue. The recent study outside of the breach report is last year in 2022, we put 1 million people into new cyber-related positions. That sounds awesome. Like, great. Filling positions. Everyone should get in that career path, be looking for one. The outcome, though, we still had 1 million open positions leaving last year. So you have to lean into technology. You have to lean into your process a little bit. And so that's where IBM is at, is we are trying to give more rapid results, make sure we're reducing the false positives, and more importantly, giving high fidelity alerts. If you really had a takeaway from today's conversation, team, is how do we get the most prescriptive, high fidelity alerts that need action, and then give you the intelligence to do something with it, right? There's 2 parts of that conversation. So that's kind of where we're at with my opening remarks, Paul.
Awesome, Scott. Thank you so much. And I've also sat in on some CIO executive breakfasts and CISO executive breakfasts, I should say, and I've heard similar things. It's very hard to find and retain people that are talented enough to work in this industry, and it's one of the challenges that they face. So any solution that can help them to tackle that internally is obviously going to be welcome. So another big part of our topic today, attack surface management, Randori. right? Big announcement within the last couple of years at IBM. Why did IBM add ASM? Why did they make that investment to the portfolio?
Sure. So this really rounds out where we're going. And to be kind of sum it up here, Paul, our next slide talks to this just right to the heart of it. Organizations that adopt a continuous threat exposure management program are 3 times less likely to suffer from a data breach. You just heard about the numbers, right? It's going up every single year. We're eclipsing almost 4.5 million. And so I think the reality is we've come to a time and space where in 2023, most everyone appreciates that a breach can happen and a breach will happen and you're going to get breached. The question now is, what's the impact, number one? And number two, how soon can you remediate? We all get it. We know our credit cards are going to get breached. We know that some of the firms we work with, third party, it's going to happen. The question is are you missing out it for 90, 120, half a year? Or do you know about it in days? Are you responding within minutes? Do you have a program to do so? So for us, this bookends what we've done so well around orchestrating a response, knowing the threats, and now we can say all of our solutions from the eyes of an attacker, how could we suffer a breach? And so, Paul, the next slide, I think, hopefully organizes our concept about our strategy, which is we mentioned suite, this whole QRadar suite, which is a combination of technologies. We're now adding in ASM. And I'm going to take a quick pause and say attack surface management is very new to the scene. We're talking since the pandemic, let's say, right? So this is very bleeding edge for IBM to acquire an emerging space technology, and it was for this purpose. Last year on the holidays, Paul, you might recall, you and I talked about this, was, in the sake of time, we won't show the YouTube video clip. However, for any of us who grew up and know the movie Home Alone, or maybe our kids watch it now, you have Joe Pesci coming in, impersonating a police officer, coming into the home, the opening scene. He starts to understand, hey, these people are going to be away, where are your parents, what's going to happen? That, if you view that from an IT perspective, that's what attackers are doing. They're going around trying to find the low-hanging fruit. You're going on vacation during the holidays. You live in a beautiful neighborhood. The trash isn't being collected. The mail is overspilling. Newspaper, these are all telltale signs of what's going on. However, you might say, I have great firewalls. The front door is locked. I have great alarm system. I have ADT. The reality is, understanding the vector and the path of how an attacker might visualize and operate against your environment is mission critical, right? So I'll pause there and say, we are really pleased with what ASM can do for us when you think about Randori. I also like to kind of share too, Paul, Randori, the name, is actually a martial arts term for practice, right? For practicing what is going to happen in warfare. And so it kind of really just bleeds in very well to what we're talking about here, is the opportunity to have, acting at greater scale, more speeds and more accuracy. That's what we're doing here, right? So we'll talk more about this going on, but that's kind of where we start today.
Awesome. Love that analogy too. Great analogy. Even better movie. Watch that every Christmas with the kids. Fantastic.
For sure.
So again, for those who aren't aware, at a high level, could you explain QRadar and ASM? And I know we kind of went into that just now,
sure.
But if you were in an elevator with somebody and had a minute, what would you say?
Yeah. Really, really great. So historically with QRadar, we would talk about, an incident or an offense, which is a combination of all kinds of telemetry across your network, right? Between user behavior analytics, understanding what's going on the network layer for layer 4, layer 7, correlating all your logs, and then giving you that proverbial rap sheet of what's going on. In a very similar way, Paul, on our next slide, what we talk about is a very similar path in kind of its own swim lane, which is a Randori target temptation. This is a notion through all of these different factors, these 1 through 6, about what is vulnerable. And so what I mean by that for the folks kind of maybe new to the ASM space is that just because a Windows 95 server goes unpatched, does that really mean anything? You might see that on a scan that you're doing, perhaps with a Qualys or Rapid7 or any kind of number of vendors that are out there. It might say you have a vulnerability. The question always comes down to, is it exploitable? What's sitting behind that server? And that's what we're trying to do here, team, if we kind of think conceptually, is looking around the corner. What is it that I can't see that maybe a Randori could help us get perspective on through these factors, right? Is it a known weakness? How critical is it? Is it a log for a jailbreak to take down my business? Is it 0 day? All these things that come into play are real. And so what we're trying to do is say, how can we sift through all the vulnerabilities to say, for your business, for the organization, for your industry, what might be tempting to an attacker in today's society?
Thank you.
And so this is speaking to, I mentioned the term like lifeblood of our platform is, I think sitting center stage from a UI perspective is going to be your SIEM. And there's a lot out there. If anyone's looked at the market, that started out with a handful of logging tools 20 years ago. Then it went into some degree of correlation. If you jump forward to this now day and age, we have things that are down to the level of a security data lake or doing core logging and doing sub-second search that we can do. The notion, the premise here is that you got to have a place in a repository for all your logs to be correlated, normalized, and ingest some sort of correlation. And that's what we do for near real-time threat detection, the opportunity to have an analyst sit in front of us and look at the UI and see what's really going on. And ultimately provide that seal of approval about, has something been detected? Is it remediated? And how was it done to avoid it happening in the future? That's what our SIEM does today.
Fantastic. Why do they work so well together?
Yeah. So this is really comes down to is I think where IBM makes strategic investments, and you can build a slide for us, Paul, if you so choose to through the whole widgets, sure. Is not just acquiring tools for the sake of having more tools. I think the old adage is, you know, there are dozens of tools, some of them don't correlate. You don't necessarily have to have that IT debt around kind of managing it, upgrading them, and have them all interoperate. What we've done is we believe there's strong harmony between understanding if you're using some sort of a ticketing-based tool, or for us, it'd be our SOAR, is the idea of something is found. Something is found in Randori. Something is known in the ASM space. How do we then manage it to full resolution before it's even exploited? And that can be done how we feel through a SOAR technology, opening a case, understanding where the threat would live, running it through the playbook, who has to be involved, and what happens next. The goal here is, can we actually find something before it's exploited and give the firm a win? And then just rinse and repeat here, team. That's the whole goal, is going down the checklist of all these target temptations, running them against the playbook, producing an outcome and a core KPI, closing the case, and knowing that you prevented something happening to stop the business. That is where we see this really having a strong case for all of us.
Fantastic, Scott. Full life cycle.
There we go.
So, great question. So a lot of people will be thinking, what's the difference between a vulnerability scanner and an ASM? And can they replace their seasonal pen test with a solution like Randori?
Yeah. So this is where I feel like we need to really think kind of critically, right? And this is the idea that it gets away from the idea of, are we doing compliance security or risk-based security? And so opening remark to the exact question to give you a direct answer is no, it shouldn't replace your pen test. That's for compliance. No, it's not going to replace your vulnerability scanner because that has other purposes for infrastructure and IT. Okay. What it is going to do is augment that, right? So if you're sitting there from the SOC side and trying to think about how we want to manage the business, is this can add a layer above that. And let me give you a better answer is, you and I sit down, we run a business, we get our annual pen test. It hits the desk with 10 things we have to do. As soon as that hits our desk, it becomes antiquated. It is now old data. You know, attackers and any kind of, you know, threat actor is going to go after something else now, right? That is just kind of looking in the rear view a little bit, in my opinion. Right. Likewise, a scan you're going to get out of any kind of vulnerability scanner is going to produce pages of potential data points that are all SEV 5 or SEV 1 or whatever. And so you can't possibly get through those and remediate with any kind of intelligence, is the word I'm going to say. So this is where ASM fits in very well, is do those things for your compliance side. If you truly move into a risk-based posture, this is where it can fit, right? And this slide kind of articulates what we say when we say putting a client into platform, is the notion of continuous automated scanning. It's not a point in time. It's not monthly. It's not quarterly. This is generating alerts at capacity on a day-by-day, minute-by-minute basis with what you'll see in this red dot, a top 15 targets that meet certain criticality to manage it.
I think that's a huge benefit to any client. Being able to identify the ones that are most important and look into those immediately is a game changer. So exactly. Fantastic. Now, as you travel the country in your North American role, what trends are you seeing in the market itself when you talk to clients or when you're just maybe sitting down listening to competitors at conferences?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the first thing that keeps coming to mind is really just the natural resource we have about time. I think that organizations are trying to, move forward. The data sprawl is real. Coming out of the pandemic with, multi-clouds and people working remote, just the organic nature of how data is being proliferated across every organization. I think there is an interlock there with time. We need to find ways to lean into technology and process to reduce the time of remediation. If there was, I think everyone is okay with, getting punched. We want to be able to counter right away and have a response plan and be able to know what's going on. And so, this slide, I think, articulates kind of what we see and what we're trying to understand. I talked about like the middle bucket a second ago, which is the disconnection of tools. That has been going on for a decade, right? Is a certain business unit wants a point solution, a certain part of IT needs a certain vendor to do blank, and you kind of start like seeing this stuff grow and it becomes IT debt. We just want to reduce the noise. It's kind of just the idea of how do we help manage that, understand the current environment, have a hybrid approach, right? We're not asking anyone to buy all IBM. We'll talk about that in a minute. But it's an idea of appreciating what you've invested in and trying to extrapolate real-time alerts across all these vendors for a collaborative approach. So, we talked about how Gartner said you'll be 3 times less likely to suffer from a breach if you have an ASM. Same thing here, right? Is the idea of starting to have a program around ASM. A lot of organizations don't have it yet. This is a very new cutting edge space, right? Or I think you should kind of go from left to right, just the idea of keeping up with attackers. And this is what I mean by that is, they're sophisticated. They're running the same kind of scripts, same kind of programs we have for our responses, and they're getting more sophisticated. That's been kind of that, just kind of chasing your tail a little bit. That's been happening over and over again. So how do we start to leverage data that we already have to become more predictable and more precise is the words I kind of come up with. And then just lastly, when I talked about the notion of alert fatigue, it's the overload. What the alert fatigue stems from overloading the environment and trying to say, are we having some analysis paralysis here? And that's where I really think that organizations are going, and just having a lot of paralysis around all the alerts they're seeing today.
Fantastic. Now, from an IBM perspective, when you're out there talking to clients, they're evaluating competitors, what do you say? What do the sellers say to differentiate IBM from the competitive market?
So this is a newer slide for us coming out of RSA, and it's meant to say, let's meet a client wherever they are on their journey, Paul. Instead of saying it's a rip and replace, right? We can partner up with Ironside and better understand, what do you have today? What do you like today that we shouldn't be, looking at? And the opportunity to have this modular-based technology is a business case that IBM has that we believe is standalone, right? The idea to say, can we look and collaborate through open APIs with competitive tools or complementary tools or adjacent tools, whatever you want to call it, areas that we don't focus on. That's where we are. So these are 2 examples, I would say, about start with what you think is mission critical. I mean, everyone's got to appreciate there's a maturity curve. And I would say today, a lot of folks are putting the spotlight on EDR. Makes a ton of sense. Start with the endpoints, that absolutely is a win. And then expand to where you want to expand. And so these are just kind of showing the building blocks we have at IBM that span most primary domains with leading edge technologies. The bottom one is probably a little bit more relevant, which is we know that clients and customers have made significant investments with technologies for good reason, right? They have industry leading technology and they want it to be correlated and be able to jump across each one. So for us, we agree. If you already have a tried and true SIEM that works for your business, great. Let's talk about maybe where a SOAR technology could fit in. If you're already running a SIEM and SOAR, have a product that's active for ASM? We'd love to have that conversation around Randori. And it kind of goes on down the line about picking and choosing what can make sense, the interoperability. The beauty is we scale in any capacity. We have SaaS delivery, we have cloud delivery, we have VM, we have on-prem. This is something that we have matured over time to work with a client with whatever they are, right? I mean, it's no secret. Financial services has a lot of regulations requiring some data center based activity. We also know that clients, a lot of them making the move and the jump to the cloud as fast as possible for operational expense purposes and easy doing business. So we work in all those environments, and that's kind of where we sit today. And Paul, by all means, add where appropriate.
No, from my own experience, it was always and still is. It's great to be able to know that there's a set of solutions that integrate with other people's existing investments, right? Because a lot of those solutions out there do some things very well, and it's nice to come in and say, well, where else do you need coverage? Did you know about ASM? Did you know about IBM SOAR capabilities? Whatever it may be,
Right.
to expand the conversation and just let them know that we understand not everybody's a one vendor shop. That it's not the way of the world anymore, and we're prepared to help you wherever you may need it.
Yeah, and Paul, I'll close with that too as we go to the next slide. Just the idea of, you can go to the next slide, is the idea of there are some major vendors out there that are trying to do vendor lock-in, right? Offer enterprise agreements just to work with them, and so that's something that we are absolutely giving the Heisman to. We do not want to go down that path at all. We want to make it very, very open for any number one of our clients.
Fantastic. I think people on the line appreciate hearing that too.
Sure.
Now, with all of this, generative AI, Watson X, Chat GPT, the new wave of, AI is like a common household term now. Like, you hear people talking about it. They're using it themselves to do different things. How cybersecurity, and in particular IBM cybersecurity, looking at these advancing technologies and thinking about the threats that they may pose, along with the benefits that they create, right?
That's right. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny. My oldest daughter is in high school, and they no longer allow writing assignments to go home because Chat GTP does it all for them. So it's only in school writing, which is the nuance of that. Listen, this is a conversation that's it's big and take its own take 30 in a lot of ways. Let me level set a little bit and just say that there's a few things that I view in this world and where we come from and where we're going. First of which is, just like the adversaries, we got to understand how are they using generative AI or just AI in general. So we're going to appreciate that. Then there's the other side of how are technologies embedding AI to go faster, simpler, time to response, you name it. And then the outcome is also, I think, just where could AI have its own loopholes and its own security flaws as well. So it's kind of three different buckets in my mind. What I have found is that we're intermixing a couple of the terms here, because the very, very bottom dark blue quadrant is foundational models. That's the generative AI that people are talking about today. But let's take a step back and say AI is this broader brush, right? Around, like, think about like the machine learning side, the deep learning side. How can we leverage some kind of cognitive functions that a human would use, but give it reason, perspective, and help you kind of solve it, right? That's what QRadar does today, right? Is, people come to me saying, does IBM have AI? And the answer is yes. I mean, go back to the days of having Watson on Jeopardy. We've been doing this for a decade, and we've already injected that into some of our tech. The question comes down to, for the customer, for the client, what does generative AI mean to you? Are you already doing great things with machine learning? Do you already have a deep learning program that makes a ton of sense with the data scientist? These are building blocks. I think you can't run to a foundational model. You have to be able to do the other steps really, really well to have this be a value add to the business. So yes, natural language within ChatGPT, awesome. That's great for so many household use cases. Our position at IBM and from a security vector is going to be trust. We want to give a trusted foundational model. That's why we built Watson X. That's what's getting all the publicity now on our side. Just know, without kind of letting the cat out of the bag, there will be some security protocols wrapped around Watson X. So that's where you'll see our mission heads down to do that. The big takeaway here is I just love this slide to show how we got here, right? And I think it's just meaningful to know that there are tons of technologies. You look, just like as an example for Paul, for you and I, the user behavior analytics we have, that is the bedrock of original AI and machine learning. Or a cyber assistant on our endpoint for EDR, that is machine learning and deep learning in action. So more to come on this team. Just really something we want to make sure we get our hands around, because like anything, I think security doesn't have to be the laggard, but they're the ones going to make the most questions. So before we go in and have generative AI do everything for us, so looking at an alert, we want to be smart about where that approach makes a ton of sense.
Great answer, Scott. And as we get to this, some of our final slides here, a question came in, and I think it's a good one. As far as the way people begin on the security journey with these solutions, do they have to jump in, 100% with both feet, or is it, scalable? And I think, this slide kind of talks to that as well. But as they're getting started, I know, but maybe you could explain, IBM's position on getting newer folks who
Sure.
have the mandates, they have the need, they've been told we need to get serious about our security posture. When they're looking at these, is it all jump in at once, or can we grow and scale as the business requires?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, Paul, that kind of consumption model and growing with the business is very real. And I also won't hide or shy back from the fact that there's that stigma that IBM is an enterprise-based client, or there has to be a certain threshold for the Fortune 1000, 2000. And let's be clear that as a business unit of security, we fit hand in glove to any business. If this is the first time we're jumping into bed with a SIEM, we can meet your business needs right now at a small entry point. If you've never experienced a SOAR and you want to explore just a handful of users to get into a SOAR, we can do that as well. Absolutely, we can scale. The goal is still give every one of our clients the accuracy and speed that they demand, right? It's not about small, medium, large. It's really about delivering the same technology across a breadth of a client base. Sure, we can scale. That's what we're known for. However, maybe not so known is the idea that we have so many new clients getting onboarded as an entry pack to say, we need a small amount of this. We want to explore that, especially in a SaaS world, right? This is all hands off in large part. We opened up talking about that. I kind of help am responsible for kind of the threat business at IBM. I want to talk about the three kind of pillars you see here on the right side in these boxes around threat, data, and identity. What I view this as, and this is kind of my New England accent coming out, is, what we have is we have a detector, we have a protector, and then we have a verifier. And that's really the cornerstone. If someone were to say to me in an elevator, what can we do for you? These are what we do. We help around threat detection. We have a full-blown data security element that's been, massive as the data sprawl gets real. And then the IAM space. I mean, it doesn't get a lot of attention and notoriety. However, it's a very real thing in a multi-cloud world. As things go into SaaS, people want frictionless authentication, passwordless authentication, you name it. It becomes very real. So, this is one of our closing slides here. And I just want to kind of say that, IBM's here to meet the needs, or better said, augment what you're doing today, maybe offer additional layer of protection for anyone.
Fantastic, Scott. I think we're at the end here. We want to close on time. My email's at the bottom of the screen, everyone. If you have any questions, please send them my way. We'd love to, have one-on-one conversations with you, address these in any format that you prefer. I think we have about a minute left here. Let me see if any questions came in. All right, so Scott, while we have a minute, what are the trends that IBM's seeing as a priority for customers to have in place as they begin the journey, I'd say, or at least, the necessities of, a foundation around cybersecurity?
Sure. I mean, I think last year the flavor of the week was talking about things around XDR, right? Extended detection and response, which is really the trifecta of having some sort of technology that was on the network level, the SIEM and user behavior analytics level, and then the EDR. So if someone were to say, I got nothing, or where would you want to begin? I'd say, one, what kind of framework do you want to follow? COBIT, ISO, something that's industry related, pick that as well. But then really comes down to if you're early in that journey is, again, I think the highlight of the focus on the endpoint, number one, having a way to collect all logs and get greater visibility with a SIEM is huge. And then lastly, kind of the proverbial, the network doesn't lie. Being able to capture a layer 4, layer 7, packet in transit, that is real data that a hacker cannot manipulate. And so I always love talking about the network layer going from that black and white TV to the full-blown HD 3D. So that's what I would say is kind of that legacy thing from 2022 around a full XDR strategy.
Awesome. All right. So, I mean, we're a little over time, but we're within the 30 minutes that we started with, because we started about a minute late. So, Scott, thank you so much for joining us today. Truly appreciate it. A lot of information within 30 minutes. really love having you as a partner, and hopefully we can do this again on a different topic, in the future as well. For everyone that joined, thank you. You can see my email at the bottom of the screen. Love to connect with you, to have a conversation, get your thoughts on what you heard today. Take some time to think of questions as they relate to your business. And Ironside and IBM are here to help. So again, thank you very much. Appreciate you taking the time out of your afternoon, and have a great rest of the week.